warm good morning to everyone. Venerable Liwe Gyembo, our chair, and Venerable Anyim, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for having me here in Oxford attending this ISBS conference, which is of course historic to Oxford and ISBS community, but in particular I think it's historic to a lot of Bhutanese who are attending here. And of course, personally it's very historic because I'm trying to peep into the world of academia. So I'm very, very new to academia, so if I make mistakes, please bear with me. My presentation, as pointed out by Liwe Gyembo already, is Sacred Geography, Footprints of Padmasambhava. The topic looks really big actually, but I'll be presenting a very, very small, or rather aspect of what is inexhaustive. Guru Padmasambhava is limitless, I would like to say. And of course, I'd like to get the blessing of Guru Padmasambhava to do this presentation well. Now, first of all, let me tell you a story to begin with. Not so long ago, about 30 plus years ago, I was a little boy and I was playing in the field with my mother, who was working in the field. Suddenly we were shaken by a loud thunder and lightning. It was so loud that my mother screamed and said, Om Ahum Vazaguru Pema Siddhi Hum, Om Ahum Vazaguru Pema Siddhi Hum. Of course, that's the mantra, of course I was terrified. And mother looked up to the sky and said, worriedly of course, the storm is coming. I didn't understand what it was, but again the thunder and lightning kept, splitting the sky, and I thought the sky was going to come crashing down on us. So then suddenly it started pouring on us. My mother dropped everything, caught hold of my hand and dashed towards the shelter. And of course, thanks to the mantra that my mother screamed all throughout, we were safe. Wait, of course. Then later, out of curiosity, I asked my mother, what was it that she was muttering? I didn't understand anything. And of course, she said, it's the mantra of Guru Padmasambhava. And thanks to Guru Padmasambhava, we are safe. And that day, she gave me this advice to actually recite this mantra throughout my life, especially in times of danger. And of course, being the good son that I was, until today, I haven't been able to practice that, of course, occasionally. And that's why my mother, even now, whenever I go out of my home, my mother always tells me, recite this mantra, Om Ahum Vazaguru Pema Siddhi Hum. Yeah. And of course, this research paper, which I did for my master's in applied Buddhist studies, is actually trying to address my childhood question of who is Padmasambhava, or who was Padmasambhava. And of course, many questions came up later, more recently though, and this research paper basically is trying to answer the question, why is Bhutan's geography sacred? Because yesterday we heard a lot about Guru Padmasambhava from our Venerable Lipins, and of course from a few other presenters. So I thought I'll skip the introduction of Guru Padmasambhava. I assume everybody knows a little bit of Padmasambhava, or maybe, of course, for some, you're much more knowledgeable than me, I'm sure. But I would like to give a brief background to the significance of Padmasambhava in Bhutan. Actually, this picture doesn't allow me to speak much because it speaks itself. His Majesty the King standing in the courtyard right in front of the Guru Rinpoche Thongdril, which is bigger than life, of course, in Bhutan. And at the backdrop we have the people of Bhutan and the fortress, the National Museum of Paro. So Guru Rinpoche is, I would like to say everything to Bhutan. You can tell me what Guru Rinpoche is not. Of course, we can come up with a book as well in the future. And let's see what the scholars have to say. And one of the leading authors of Bhutan, or rather scholars of Bhutan, Dr. Karma Phuntsho says the Bhutanese world is imbued with Padmasambhava's presence. The history, culture, and nature about a reflection of his actions. Very true, of course. And similarly, the former Chief Justice of Bhutan, Dasho Sonam Tobye, quotes that Padmasambhava bestowed spiritual, social, cultural, intellectual, political, legal legacies to Bhutan, which are still followed today. And after hearing that, we quite know that Guru Padmasambhava visited Bhutan. But before Guru Padmasambhava visited Bhutan, I thought we should, I should trace the journey as to where he started from in the first place, and which other places did he travel to, and was there a link to the geographical routes that he followed in the 8th century. So then, of course, Dasho Karma Ura, who is attending the conference here with us, says that Guru Rinpoche traces his journey in Kashmir, Pakistan, Xinjiang, Tajikistan, Zhangzhou, Nepal, Bhutan, Tibet, and many parts of India. And he also mentions that Guru Padmasambhava in some parts of China, Mongolia, Sri Lanka, and cannibal lands. I don't know where these cannibal lands are, but I would like to draw your attention to the last line, though I was unable to make out whether it was physical or metaphysical. Of course, it's a different topic by itself. You can do a research on this. Most probably I'll be doing this. I'm really interested because some people believe that Padmasambhava did not visit Bhutan, or rather this geographical region physically. Some people tend to believe that somehow, it has come about because of his followers, because of Tertins and all that. And there is this important term that I come across. I'm sure Kumagai is well aware of. I think he's the author of that. Buddhization. Like most of our landscapes have been Buddhized in the later centuries. So it owes a lot to that too. But we cannot prove anything as of now. But for now, definitely, I as a Buddhist, and of course, having referred to a lot of texts, I would like to say that Guru Padmasambhava did visit Bhutan. And similarly, Holman, of course, is specific in naming some of the places in this region. And this is the main tracing the Guru Padmasambhava's journey. Pakistan is here, this side of Pakistan, Afghanistan, where he was born, in the Salt Valley. And from there on, he moved on to Nepal, Bhutan, and of course visited to many other countries shaded in yellow. And of course, one of the beliefs is that Guru Padmasambhava also visited the islands of Java and Sumatra down there. So did Padmasambhava really visit Bhutan? Now, from outside Bhutan, we are stepping into Bhutan. So our Venerable Levi Gyambo, I'm quoting him because he has, I think, he is an expert of Guru Padmasambhava as well, because he is the Vajrayana holder in our country, the true practitioner. So he quotes that Guru Rinpoche traveled the length and breadth of the country, and that Bhutan is indeed a sacred land practicing the teachings of the sacred Vajrayana tradition. And of course, to add to that, Dasho Tsering Tobge, the former Prime Minister of Bhutan, who is also here with us in Oxford, he quotes that Guru Padmasambhava visited Singezong, Gongfu Kora, Omdra in the east, Nabji in Transa, Kurji and Bumtang in the center, Paro Tatsang in the west. Quite specific. And of course, it's not enough to refer to authors and writers. Some of the traditional texts, especially the treasure texts, I have some examples here, quotes from the text. The first one is from Mine Accomplishment That Bears the Seal of Secrecy. Tugruk Sawa Gyeltshen states, a place in Bhutan that I have not set my foot on, even the size of a horseshoe or sesame, is not there. Of course, I think it means to say that Guru Padmasambhava was everywhere in Bhutan. And I'll just keep this because I have few of them. And here is another one. I would like to just refer to the first line, at the border between Mon and Tibet, there are 4 greater hidden lands. So actually, I'm sure you're well known about Guru Padmasambhava's activities. One of his activities was concealing religious or spiritual treasures in this Himalayan region. So Mon and Tibet, the border between Mon and Tibet actually, I think it falls in Bhutan. Because in the previous slide, you also saw the gorges. So that too actually matches very well. And one of the Dzongkha scholars, the leading Dzongkha scholars in Bhutan, states that the undeceiving and indestructible words of the scriptures thus confirm Bhutan as Beyul, which means he has hidden spiritual treasures in Bhutan. And that's why Bhutan is a separate country. Now, regarding his visit to Bhutan, it is said that he visited Bhutan 3 times. First, he visited to Mon Bumthang, the central Bhutan, of course, from Nepal or India. Back then, I think there was no India or Nepal, but nowadays in text I have come across as India in some sources, Nepal as some sources, and the year was 746-47. Quite confused, I think, other writers are. And I've also seen one of the articles by Levi Gembo, and there we have different times. Of course, Bhutan has different calculations for year. So a lot of discrepancies in the dates. Anyways, his second visit was from Tibet to Tatsang, and that time he was escorted by one of his 25 disciples. He was named Denma Tseman. And third and the last visit was from Tibet to Khenpa Jong. And that time he was escorted by his Tibetan consort Yeshe Tsogyal and the Tibetan prince Kikaratu, who was banished from Tibet. Now that he came to Bhutan, how long did he stay in Bhutan? How much time did he spend in Bhutan? Of the 55 plus years that he lived in Tibet, I think he spent about 1 or 2 years in Bhutan, or at the most 3. But most of the sources tend to stick to around 1 year. That's adding this months. Like Guru spent 3 months in Singezong, 3 months in Mongom, or Gomkora, 3 or 4 months in Tatsang, 2 months in Chumofu, and in other places. And in some rare sources, I found that Guru Padmasambhava actually meditated in Paratatsang for 3 years, 3 months, 3 weeks, and so on. And now regarding the routes which he used while visiting Bhutan or while coming and going from Bhutan, not many sources mention of the routes. And of course, it is clearly pointed out by Dashokarma in some of his articles and books. Just one example is that he points out that an oral tradition of the Monpa of Trongsa maintains that Guru came up from India through Napji, Kruba, Frunzur, and Jambi, and reached Bumthang via Nangdakla. And that was, I believe, when Guru Rinpoche visited Bumthang for the first time. So this is the routes that Guru Rinpoche used. And of course, the other 2 are when Guru Rinpoche visited from Tibet and went back to Tibet, and later they came to Bhutan and then flew to the southwest, somewhere in the lands of the demons. And of course, since he came to Bhutan, he did a lot of things for Buddhist people of that time and of the future times. And of course, definitely for us, the present time. So there are many, but I have just listed here 4. The first one is, of course, I'm sure everyone is aware, this is where his where the legend of Guru Padmasambhava, his visit to Bumthang, the central Bhutan, where he, where he tames Shalgin Karpo, who actually steals the life force of King Sindhuraja of the time. So that is one of the most important things. I'm sure most of you are aware of that. And second important activity carried out by Padmasambhava was that of peacemaking and law enforcement, as I would like to put it, because he mediated between the 2 rival kings, King Sindhuraja or the Gyap of Bumthang, and the neighboring Indian king Naoche. And of course, it led to the installment of the immortal stone pillar of peace at a place known as Nathang. Nowadays it's known as Napji. And Guru Rinpoche is said to have built or renovated temples in Bhutan. And of course, he also is said to have constructed a number of statues and images. Then of course, the other important activity, I think I covered this earlier, so I'll just jump. And because he visited Bhutan, this is actually the result of his visit. Because he visited Bhutan, he blessed Bhutan, he concealed treasures of all sorts. That's why we have these sacred sites in Bhutan. These are just a few of the many that we have. Actually, in one of the texts I have read that Paro alone has nearly 100 sacred sites of Guru Padmasambhava, but these are the major ones. And this is the map showing these major sacred sites of Guru Padmasambhava. And of course, Guru Padmasambhava also visited some other places in Bhutan, very important places, Tang Rimochin and Thoda, where Guru Rinpoche is believed to have meditated. And of course, Guru Rinpoche also visited and blessed Kunzangdra, Shabjetang, Chejidra, Mebaso, and other places. In eastern Bhutan, Guru Rinpoche visited at least 10 places in these 3 districts. And Guru Rinpoche, after meditating in Paro, is also said to have visited Ha and Gasa later on, at a later stage. And Guru Rinpoche also visited 21 sacred places in Thimphu, Punakha, and Wangdi. And later, on his journey down south, he visited Thanam Khadzong and Beul Gondra in Dagana district. And of course, Guru Padmasambhava's teachings is one of the most important things that lives as his heritage now, his legacy in Bhutan, as in some other regions of the Himalaya. So Guru Rinpoche most importantly gave like 4 teachings in Bhutan. The first teaching is the heart essence Nyingthik teachings of Dzogpa Chenpo Sewe Melong to the entourage of King Sindhu and Kikarate in Kurje. Because Guru Rinpoche visited Bhutan for the first time, and I think that gave him the chance to teach in the king's court. And later, Guru gave 13 teachings on Vajrakila at Singizong to his 5 key Tibetan disciples, including Khandro Yeshe Tsogel. And Guru also gave empowerment of 8 great herokas at Natham to the entourage of King Sindhu and Naoche after the peacemaking ceremony. And Guru Rinpoche is also believed to have given some Dakini teachings to Khandro Yeshe Tsogel at Tatsang. And one key point which is not found in text is that the name Chokor has actually derived, or rather it got its name because Guru Padmasambhava gave the teaching for the first time in a spot in Tatsang. Actually, there is a Chorten just above Bumtang Hospital, which is nowadays not really considered very important, but that's the place where Guru Rinpoche first gave his teachings. And although Guru Rinpoche gave teachings to many people in Bhutan, these are the key players, I think, key disciples that are mentioned in most of the sources. First of all, King Sindhuraja. By nature, he invited Guru Padmasambhava, so his name comes first. Then, of course, Bumden Somo, King Sindhuraja's daughter, who acted as the tantric consort of Guru at Bumtang Kurje in the process of taming the deity Shagin Karpo. And there's an important name which is also not often, often mentioned in texts, which is Haminatha, the meditator from Mon, who was a personal disciple of Padmasambhava, who accompanied Guru to Tibet. And he was reborn in Tibet in the 10th century as Terten Monmo Kyil. And the other one is Monmo Tashi Chidren. She is also known as Tashi Kyudren. She was the Buddhist disciple and consort of Guru Rinpoche, who also accompanied Guru to Tibet and played the role of supporting consort in the cycle of Vajrakila with Guru in Ongku Tatsang. And last but not least, King Marapai. This, of course, comes from Dashukarma Ura's book. King Marapai of Trongsa is said to have hosted Guru while en route to Bhutan. This actually comes from the oral tradition in central Bhutan. And later, of course, thank you very much. Later, of course, his disciples followed, mainly in the form of Tertans, as prophesied by Guru Padmasambhava himself in the 8th century. And these Tertans were actually his primary disciples, who were later reborn in different centuries, and they actually propagated Padmasambhava's teachings. And just to name a few, I have Sangye Lama in the 10th century, who was actually the first Tertan, and followed by Guru Chuang, and followed by Nyangren Nyima Yuzur and Guru Chuang, both of whom actually lived in Bhutan. And of course they taught in Bhutan. And I have a list of names, starting with Ugyen Lingpa, Doji Lingpa, Ratna Lingpa, and a lot of them. And one of them, of course, Pema Lingpa, is our own beloved Tertan from central Bhutan, Bumthang, who did an excellent job in further propagating Buddhism in Bhutan. And then, of course, we have other cohort of these masters. They are known by different names. They don't have this honorific term, Lingpa, but they played their own rules. And so they did this job. I think my time is up, so I'll just wind up. So of course, in conclusion, because Padmasambhava visited Bhutan, blessed concentrations, and left physical imprints that led to knowing Bhutan as Beyul, which is translated as the secret hidden land. And I think that, from my perspective, equates to what we would like to call Bhutan nowadays as the sacred land of Guru Rinpoche. Thus, the sacred geography of Bhutan. Thank you so much.